Today we are meeting on Lutruwita, Tasmania Aboriginal land, sea and waterways. I acknowledge with deep respect the traditional owners of this land, the Palawa people, upon which we meet today. We pay respects to their elders past and present as the knowledge brokers and sharers. We honour their strong culture and knowledge as vital to their self-determination, well-being and resilience of their communities. We stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language and history. So this year's theme for our Forthside Field Day is growing value for cool climate horticulture. And this theme is aligned to one of the big projects that we have at the Tasmanian Institute of Agriculture. It's a Hort Innovation funded project, and the project aims to grow the value of cool climate horticulture by 20% over the next 5 years. And the staff involved in the program, the research staff, our aim is to really work with growers, work with industry to co-design projects, to co-design research, to de-risk their investments in cool climate horticulture. We recognise that being a farmer, that being an industry, a partner in cool climate horticulture is risky, is challenging. It's we have so many challenges when it comes to climate and the changing of climate. And our goal as researchers and farm staff is to really work with growers to de-risk that investment, to give growers confidence to keep investing in cool climate horticulture, to grow that value, to hit that government target of $10 billion by 2050. And we're working hard with growers to achieve that. 2023 is also a very special occasion as we celebrate 60 years of the farm, of the Forthside Research Farm. And it's also 60 years of ag science at the University of Tasmania. So it's fabulous to be able to celebrate that. We'll be cutting a cake to celebrate both of those events today. So I would like to invite Minister Joe Palmer to come and say a few words on behalf of the Tasmanian Government. Welcome to you.
It was a gorgeous drive-in from Launceston this morning. I think we're in for a cracker of a day. We'll all be taking off the blazers and what have you as we enjoy everything that we have on offer here today. Can I add my acknowledgement that we are enjoying the land and the waterways of the traditional owners of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, and add my deepest respects to elders past and present. Nigel, thank you very much. And Mike, great to be here. I've very much enjoyed the wonderful conversations that we've had and the times that we've had to share, learning more about TIA and the incredible work that you've been doing. I also want to give a bit of a shout out to Forthside Farm Manager Doug Clarke. Doug, so I'm not sure if you're actually in the marquee, but someone's pointing over the back, yeah, because he's the real worker here today. I just wanted to say congratulations, Doug, to you and your team. I know it's not easy putting an event like this together, and You've done a wonderful job, and it's to all of our benefits. So we do just want to say a very big thank you to you for that. 60 years of agricultural research. You have to be doing something right when you get to do it for 6 decades. And it must have incredible value for our state, for our agricultural industry, if after 6 decades you are held in such high esteem and so recognised as being needed for what we want to do with agriculture across Tasmania. I certainly know I'm speaking to the converted here today when I say that everyone in this room would appreciate how important and how essential research and development and extension for ongoing competitiveness, for productivity and certainly for sustainability of our agricultural industries. So recognising that over 6 decades is really special today. As a government, we are really proud of our partnership that we have with TIA. It has a number of different arms to it, and each one is really, really important to us because we see TIA and the work that it does as very much the cornerstone to the strategy that we have as a government to grow the annual farm gate value of our agricultural industry to $10 billion by 2050. And Nigel mentioned that in his opening comments. benefits as well. So 60 years of agricultural research and extension at Forthside has certainly provided our industry, really importantly, with those practical solutions that actually enable growth of our vegetable industry and, of course, the northwest Tasmanian economy in general. That's why $5 million was contributed by our government, of course, to upgrade the research facilities here at Forthside and also at the TIA Dairy research facility at Elliott, which I absolutely loved being part of the opening there and the opportunities that I've had to revisit that site. That's a combined investment by when you look at with the University of Tasmania, and these projects have totaled over $7 million. And this is really an investment not just for now, but it's an investment for tomorrow, because what we are doing now is for the next generation. And I was delighted to see that Caitlin Radford is going to be participating in some of the workshops today. Caitlin, I'm not quite sure if you're here in the room yet, but what a phenomenal young farmer she is, and what a great advocate for our industry. And it's her and it's farmers like her and the next generation of farmers that are going to benefit so much, even more than we are now, from the work that's being done by TIA. As part of the upgrade to Forthside, smart farm technologies, of course, have been installed. So that's sustainable, manageable, accessible rural technology, which gives farmers, of course, that opportunity to see and to interact with the new technologies that they can install on their own properties. And we know that that is just taking farming to the next level. It's so exciting when you actually go out on farm and you are seeing some of these technologies being used at their best. And I understand you're going to be hearing more about that from the research team who are here today. So having two state-of-the-art research farms in the northwest is certainly making really underpinning our $337 million vegetable industry, our $490 million dairy industry, and of course continues to have the northwest of Tasmania really stamping its seal as a region of excellence when it comes to agriculture and to agricultural research. In the past 5 years, our government has also allocated $3 million through our Agricultural Innovation Fund. And of course, that's for specific projects that are then delivered by TIA, with more than $2.7 million in additional industry co-funding. And these projects have been absolutely fascinating to be watching them as they've been delivered, from our berries, our vegetables, certainly across our wine industry and also our livestock industries. Clearly, industry is looking to innovate, and we must innovate to stay ahead of the game and to continue to be the pride of our state and the pride of our country. We are producing here what the rest of the world wants, and what we produce in agriculture is so intrinsically linked to what brand Tasmania is. We should be really, really proud of what we're doing, and my sincere congratulations to all of you, and especially to TIA on the amazing work that you do. So that's all from me. Never let me be the one to stand between all of us, coffee and cake. It does look absolutely beautiful, and a very happy birthday and congratulations to TIA on this wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Palmer, for your kind words and your ongoing support, and we certainly look forward to cutting the cake with you in a moment. Can I welcome Mike Rose, the Director of TIA, to the stage?
Thank you. Good morning, and let me add my welcome to everybody to this day, this open day at Forthside. It's a cracker of a day, and Forthside looks absolutely wonderful. Yes, you've heard it 3 times now. We're celebrating 60 years of Forthside being a research farm. It was bought in 1963, and in the early days it was used to, demonstrate how to grow a crop of peas, how to grow a crop of potatoes, though over the years it's been used very substantially. Some great breakthroughs have been made here, thinking about poppies and pyrethrum, a lot of work on soil health. There's been a lot of variety trials, and as the Minister said, with government's help, we've invested a lot of money into Forthside and into Elliott in terms of bringing it into the 21st century and making making it a digital farm, and all the benefits that that brings as well, not only to itself, but demonstration-wise as well. I would like to thank Doug Clarke and his team for enabling all of that underpinning work and for getting Forthside to look so great as it does today. And yeah, I can't quite see him at the moment, but I'll mention that to him when I see him. 1963 must have been quite a year, because not only was Forthside bought in that year, but agricultural science as a discipline within the university began that year as well. It demonstrates considerable foresight on the part of our forefathers to think about what was needed, what research and what development was needed in order to underpin this industry that's so important to Tasmania, and is getting more important as we drive towards 10 billion by 2050. Let me say that one of the things I really enjoy about working in Tasmania is the seriousness with which agriculture is taken. It's taken seriously by government, it's taken seriously by the university, and it's also taken seriously by industry as well. There are plans, there's strategies, and it's thought through, and we've got a track ahead. And that all might seem obvious, and you might take that for granted, but believe me, I've worked all around the world, and this is the only place where I've seen it done quite so well. So that's a pat on the back to everybody, I think, in Tasmanian agriculture. There's a history of collaboration and synergy between industry and the university and government in order to drive this agile industry, and it's something about which I think Tasmania can genuinely be proud about. So we're celebrating 60 years of Forthside. We're celebrating 60 years of teaching of ag science. I think there's some publications perhaps down the back with some profiles of alumni and other things if you want to have a look at that. And of course, we'll be cutting the cake as well. Something else I'm really excited about is that there will be an investment of $26 million in glasshouses and other research facilities in Launceston. We announced that a couple of weeks ago, so the development application is in now, and hopefully all that will be in place for the beginning of 2025. And that will allow that next generation of research and development and connection with industry that will enable and further propel the agricultural industry forward again. Not only that, not only will the research in agriculture will be driven forward in Launceston over the next few years and accelerate, but we're now also teaching agricultural science, not just in Hobart, but also in Launceston as well. And that will allow more people to study closer to home. And hopefully that will enable more people to study agricultural science, which will give the skilled workers that the industry needs within Tasmania. So it's an exciting time. There's a lot of investment, and the challenges are great as well. Thinking about climate change, and there's no end of challenges that are coming at us straight ahead that require that research as well. So it is an exciting time, but it's also a challenging time as well. And with that, I would say thank you very much indeed for coming, and I hope you enjoy your day, and will enjoy a piece of cake in it today.
Can I invite Calum Wilson to the stage to talk about pink rot in potatoes as the first speaker?
Right. Look, welcome everybody. I decided rather than talk about one thing, we'll give a little snapshot about all the sort of stuff that the team's actually doing currently, and really keen for people just to start butting in and asking questions about what they might be interested in. So acknowledge a whole bunch of sponsors for the various work that we're doing down the bottom there. So with Hort Innovation at Through the Frontiers, Potatoes New Zealand, and Simplot in particular. How do we make this work? Point it in which direction? There we go. We've already had an acknowledgement of country, so I really just again wish to add my acknowledgement for the land we're on. And acknowledgement of the elders, past and present, and respect for those. Let's move on. No. acknowledge the team. There's a large number, well, relatively large number in the potato pathology team. Some of those are in the tent today. And we've got a bunch of new students who've just commenced, and look around and you'll see some of those there. Also, Jonathan, who's on his way, I think, and who's just commenced with us, and acknowledging the really strong input of Audrey from Simplot, who's been actively involved in a lot of our programs. Potatoes. We're in the Vegetable Research Centre here, so we really need to focus on veggies. They are the superfood. They're an amazing, amazing, amazing crop. We can't really. Who's a spud grower? Anyone involved in spuds? Look, you're all heroes, because this is one of the world's greatest crops. It is third most important crop globally for human nutrition. Feeds over 1 billion people. We tend to think of it as more of a comfort food here, perhaps, perhaps not. But really, it is a staple for a large number of people. It's also the most efficient major crop for converting of sunlight into starch for food. Blows away cereals completely. Up to 4 times the food quality of grains per hectare, and uses much less water. So in terms of, as we're moving forward for sustainable production, sustainably feeding the world, potatoes are a huge part of that moving forward. And it's not surprising that the biggest potato producers in the world are actually developing countries. They're also an excellent source of nutrients, not just starch. They've got 16% of recommended intake of potassium, for example, and 30% of vitamin C. So they're actually a really, really important nutritional crop as well. And again, some of the emphasising the food value of this in part of the developing world. So in Africa and Latin America, 40% of their energy needs on average are provided by potato. I'm struggling to read it here. For Tasmania, we grow about 1/3 of Australia's potatoes. And it's a really important crop. Farm gate value, this is 2021 figures, was around about 160 million for farm gate, but you add on top of that a processing value of another 400 and something million. $500 million, well, 600,000 per annum value in this crop just for Tasmania. It's huge. Nationally, farm gate value about 800 million. And in terms of its importance for the Australian consumers, on average, 80% of Australian households buy about 1 kilo of potatoes every shop. Potatoes, they suffer from a lot of diseases. That keeps me in business. There's foliar. There's lots of fungal diseases. That's target spot or early blight. There's a whole bunch of those. There's viral diseases. That's tomato spotted wilt, making potatoes look very ugly. There's bacterial diseases. That's common scab. And there's nematode diseases, little wiggly worms, and all of these cause significant issues for production. If you look at potato models, the theoretical maximal yield in Tasmania is something around 140 tonnes per hectare, which no one gets quite near. There are a few growers that touch 100 tonnes, but on average it's about 60 for Tasmania. So we're missing 80 tonnes per hectare. A large chunk of that is due to disease, particularly soil-borne disease. And as an example, powdery scab, one of the areas that we work strongly with, particularly focusing on its impact on root infections and efficiencies of root function. Industry estimates of around about 15% of that annual yield is lost just to infections with this particular pathogen. That's a lot of money and a lot of potatoes we don't get to eat. So our team, we're working on a whole bunch of different projects and really trying to target some of those major diseases and major industry priorities. So powdery scab is one of our major ones, and we've got a number of programs looking at powdery scab. We're also looking at pink rot, an emerging an old disease, but emerging in importance and really quite significant, particularly in the northeast. We're just starting a program looking at verticillium early dying. We're looking at whether we can manage that somewhat better, and looking at some of the foliar diseases, which are managed relatively well, but there is concerns that some of the fungicide programs we're using may not be robust into the future. There's already some inklings that some things aren't working quite as well as they should. And so indeed, we're looking at modelling that and then looking at assessing to see what risk there might be moving forward. So we aim to get a better understanding of disease and through that develop better management tools. So a quick snapshot of some of the programs and some of the projects we're dealing with. This is one of those programs that the Minister mentioned, an Ag Development Fund, so funded through the government and also with contributions from Simplot Australia. So here we're trying to understand somewhat better the dynamics of disease in potatoes, and we're focused on a couple of major foliar diseases and a couple of major soil-borne diseases. And the aim is to try and develop predictive tools that can actually let us know when and how much disease we're likely to expect in a crop. So it uses weather data, it uses soil moisture monitors, and it tries to it uses some existing models for the foliar diseases, but it's also trying to develop brand new models, particularly the soil-borne diseases, with the aim to try and find out when things happen so we can then time better our interventions. So rather than, oh gee, we'll put on a pink rot treatment at full canopy closure because maybe that's a good time, we'll actually understand when we should really be putting that treatment on, because that's when infection's starting. So again, looking at major foliar and soil-borne diseases, looking at the amount of pathogen that's around, looking at weather, and looking at crop development and plant responses. And this also has, I guess, a future scoping too, because as climate changes, we'll be able to use these models to actually understand what will happen if we do get, on average, a few degrees warmer in our production systems. Is this going to accelerate disease? How is this going to affect disease? And how do we need to adapt our management to deal with that? We've had one season of this project so far, and really, I guess the major learnings so far have probably been on the foliar disease modelling, where there are some models that exist. This is data from a spore trap looking at the amount of alternaria spores, so that's the causal agent of early blight. Oh, great, I'm going to run out of time. And it kind of highlights here, here's where the spray went on, based on grower decisions in that particular crop. If we look at this and we start looking at these models, we probably would have adjusted those sprays somewhat to better target when the real risk is. We might have even not have needed one or two of those sprays and then adjust them to get a better outcome. So I guess that's where we're coming to with this on this particular angle is, can we be more efficient in our treatments? And the soil-borne work, we're certainly starting to understand a bit better about the dynamics of disease, which ones come in first and when they come in. We're looking at novel controls for powdery scab. This is some work that we've been working with Simplot for some time, where understanding the biology of the pathogen, how it responds to the plant. So it actually responds to the exudates that the roots are produced. That actually wakes the pathogen up and causes it to swim towards the potato and infect it. So what we're looking at is, can we actually use that system against the pathogen? So if we can provide into the soil those chemicals that actually stimulate germination, but there's no potatoes, so we put those in prior to potatoes. And the thing wakes up and swims around and goes, there's nothing to infect, and it dies. And we reduce the inoculum. So when we do go in with potatoes, we have a lot less disease to deal with. We do have some field data so far, and look, it does seem to be working somewhat. We can crash down disease just by pre-treating the soil with these stimulants. We're also looking at application of these materials at planting, which kind of seems a bit counterintuitive. Why do you want to wake the thing up when the potatoes are around? Well, what we're actually doing is just confounding that whole chemical signals in the soil. So these little pathogens need to smell the chemical to find where the roots are and swim towards them. So we're providing decoy chemicals in the soil so they swim in the wrong direction and they don't infect in the first place. And again, we have field data suggesting that's actually working. We're getting yield increases, we're getting less disease. We're also looking at adding microbes to the potato to colonise around the roots that digest and eat up all of these key signalling compounds so that they're not available for the pathogen to interact with. And again, we've got good results. We've got by applying this bacteria, we boost tuber yields and we reduce disease. So by understanding how the pathogen interacts with the potato, we're able to come up with a number of different strategies to try and stop or intervene that infection process, which is looking promising. None of these by themselves is going to be the silver bullet, but starting to package them together, and I think we're getting somewhere. I'm going over time. That's it. We're doing some pink rot stuff, and I'm over time. Really, this is all about we need to understand where the inoculum's coming from, when infection occurs, and what do we do about it. Particularly alternate hosts, trying to find out where it's out there and why it's maintaining itself. And early dying, we're just starting this work, and again, going to look at, let's skip through that. The similar sort of approach we did with the powdery scab, but this time trying to wake up the resting structures of verticillium in the soil and seeing if we can kill that before potatoes come along as well. And a bunch of new product leaves. Let's just stop there.
Have you found any confirmed cases of fungicide resistance to potato diseases?
Depends what you mean by resistance. Increased tolerance. Look, there is already some evidence for increased tolerance to pink rot, for instance, with metalaxyl. We don't have many tools for pink rot. I mean, metalaxyl is kind of it, the most effective material. And it's been used for a long, long time. And while we don't have complete intolerance where it doesn't work, we've certainly got isolates. There's evidence now for isolates that respond poorly or not as well. We haven't done the work with Alternaria with target spot yet. We're going to be doing that with some students this year. But in New Zealand, they are seeing it. They're seeing fungicide resistance, fungicide tolerance. There is some suggestions from field that some growers were getting less effective control than perhaps they think they should have. So we are concerned. We're going to test that, and hopefully we'll find there's not so much, but at least there is more options there to actually start rotating things around. But we need to understand this.
So I'm Tory. I'm a research fellow with TIA, and I'm based in Burnie up here on the northwest coast. And today I'm going to talk about some of the work that we're doing here in Tasmania to develop a novel crop protection product called BioClay. And so I just wanted to introduce Akeem, who's a PhD student on this project. He's not here today, but I'm going to be talking about some of the work that he's done on this project as well. And we're part of a larger national hub, which is the ARC-funded Hub for Sustainable Crop Protection. And at UTAS, we're leading the work on developing this technology as a crop protectant for wine grapes. Okay, so before I tell you about what we're doing in wine grapes, I wanted to first tell you a little about what BioClay is, how does it work, why is it exciting, what's going on with it. So BioClay is a novel crop protection solution, and so it's using a different mechanism of action perhaps to some of your traditional fungicides that you might be more familiar with. And Go next slide. So going to get a little bit technical here to talk about this because BioClay is an RNA-based crop protectant. So you might have heard a little bit about RNA vaccines, maybe with COVID, things like this. And so BioClay is using RNA as well to target pathogens to prevent them infecting the plant. So if we go back to basics here, all living things contain DNA, and this is like your genetic code. It's the instructions for every single process that a cell, a plant, an animal might need to do. And let me use an analogy here to make this easier. Let's think of this like your textbook. And so I'm going to give this analogy around winemaking. So you've got your viticulture textbook. It's all the information you would ever need to make wine. But if you actually want to make wine, what you need to do is get some specific instructions from that textbook. So you can think of this like photocopying a page in that book. You've got one specific set of instructions that lets you do one specific thing, and that gives you a product. So in this case here for this analogy, it's wine grape. So the RNA, this is our photocopy from the book. It's a copy of our instructions that we're using to actually make a product. And so BioClay is an RNA silencing technology. And so what this means is it actually targets this copy and removes it. So silencing means it's going to degrade it. And so you can think of it as a post-it note that's targeting that RNA. And what's really special about this technology is it's specific and unique for a particular set of instructions. So that post-it note isn't going to stick to anything else except the one that you're targeting. So in this case, we're sticking a post-it note onto our recipe. And the reason you might want to do this, like if you imagine you're in your vineyard, you're ready to make your wine, you've photocopied your page, you get out to ready to make it, and you look down and you realise you've actually photocopied a page to make vinegar. You don't want to do this, we need to get rid of this one. Or someone else has come to your vineyard and they've handed out a different recipe. They're trying to sabotage your wine. And these same sorts of things actually happen in plants in their interactions with pathogens. You can have bad RNA that you don't want to have there anymore. You can have pathogens introducing their RNA to try and trick the plant into doing something else. And so plants, bacteria across kingdoms have evolved this RNAi silencing mechanism that basically is a way for the plants to remove RNA that they don't want anymore. And so what this sticky note does is it actually triggers machinery within the cell that comes and chops up the RNA. So you can think of it like a pair of scissors. It's coming in, it's chopping up that RNA, it's removing all the instructions. You can't make your product anymore. And so RNA silencing as a crop protection tool is really taking this technology and using it as a way to provide protection that suits our interests as growers of the plants. And so we use a molecule called double-stranded RNA. So that's our sticky post-it note over here. So this is small pieces of double-stranded RNA, and this is specific to genes in the pathogen that you want to target. So the pathogen requires a whole heap of different proteins to be able to infect and colonise the plant. And so what we can do is we can target those specific genes that are essential to the pathogen and get them silenced, remove them. The pathogen doesn't have its instructions anymore. It can't infect. And so this is really exciting as a crop protection tool because it means that it's really specific. It's not going to target any other parts of the microbiome. It's not going to affect the plant's RNA. It's specific to whatever pathogen that you want to target. And that's why it's so exciting as a crop protection tool. So where BioClay comes into this is BioClay is actually a formulation of that double-stranded RNA, and it's bound to a layered double hydroxy clay solution. And what this does is it stabilises the double-stranded RNA. So you can think of this like you're laminating your post-it note. If you just sprayed double-stranded RNA onto your plant, it would degrade in the environment when exposed to weather. And so by binding it to these clay particles, it stabilises it, it protects it from the weather. And our data shows it's stable for up to a month on the surface of a plant. And what happens over time is that clay will slowly break down and it will release that silencing cargo. So you're getting this sustained protection from your pathogen across a month or more of time. So as I mentioned earlier, at UTAS, we're looking to adapt this technology for wine grapes. And we've got a project where we're really trying to answer some key questions around developing this as a tool that growers can use in the vineyards. And so a lot of this is around establishing a system where we can really test this crop protectant and really start uncovering the key information that we need to know. When do we want to spray the RNA? What concentration do we need? How often do we need to spray? How effective is it? How much can we reduce the disease? And so to do that, we've got a system set up now where we can have grapevines all year round. So as you may know, grapevines flower just once a year. So that makes it tricky if you're going to study that infection process. We're targeting botrytis, which is called grey mould, or botrytis bunch rot, is the disease that you get in wine grapes. And this pathogen, it infects the berries. And so often it comes in during flowering and sort of stays in this quiescent latent phase. And then as the berries ripen, the disease will express itself. And so being able to target your crop protection around that flowering time point is a really key point to control this disease. So what I'm showing here, we propagate 2-node cuttings. We're using Riesling, that's a white wine variety. We propagate them, grow some roots and put them down in the glasshouse. And you can see here we're getting these little inflorescences. This is like the little bunch of flowers that will eventually become the grapes. Here, this is the same inflorescences during cap fall. So as the flower develops, a cap falls off, you get your stamens out, fertilisation, and that will grow into the berry. But at the point where that cap falls off, that's often a key point where botrytis can enter. Botrytis is a necrotrophic fungi. It colonises dead tissue. So where there's this little ring of dead tissue where the caps come off, the botrytis comes in. And then these flowers will develop into berries. So I'm just showing here, this is pea-size berries. And at this point, we can assess disease levels in them. So what I haven't shown you here is we also have a whole inoculation process here where we can actually inoculate these developing flowers and bunches with dry spores to stimulate the botrytis infection. We treat them with our BioClay solutions, and then we can measure the amount of disease. And here's Akeem working hard in the glasshouse measuring these plants. Oh. Okay, so another question that we're interested in is around if this double-stranded RNA might actually move within the plant. And so we know that if we spray it onto a grapeberry, that it will protect it. But if you think about in the vineyard, if you're maybe perhaps trying to do a later spray, so towards the end of the season, you might have really high leaf coverage, and you're coming along with your sprayer, you might not actually get any spray on those berries. They're kind of hidden in amongst the canopy. And so something that we want to find out is if you actually get spray onto the leaves of the plant, can it actually move within the plant to the developing berries, the inflorescences, and provide sustained protection? And so towards that, we've developed a molecular technique where we can actually quantify the amount of this double-stranded RNA, the silencing molecule, in different plant tissues over time. So that's where I'm going to finish it today, and I'm looking forward to having some more data to share with you next time.
I'm just wondering what the size of your coloured clay particles are.
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it'd be similar to like a nanoparticle. They're very small, and they just naturally degrade, so they're like a mineral clay.
Is there any danger that the RNA might persist and get into grapes and get into wine, and people are not generally happy about, some people anyway, not happy about drinking RNA? Is there going to be a problem there?
So I guess something perhaps I didn't mention is that this is non-GM. So RNA is present in all living tissues at all times, and we're not introducing foreign RNA. This is just targeting what's already there in the pathogen. There is some evidence that the RNA can persist in the plants for a few weeks, but I couldn't imagine that it would have any issue in terms of winemaking. Obviously, as we progress the project, we'll be doing a lot of testing around any residues that may carry through. But this is, it's a nucleic acid. They break down really quickly. And even if you ate it, it wouldn't do anything because it wouldn't match any of our genes. So, you eat DNA and RNA all the time when we eat vegetables.
So it's a national program. So are they working on veggies on the mainland?
Yeah, so as I said, we're doing the grape work, and as part of the national project, there's a few other crops that we're targeting. So in terms of botrytis, we have partners working on strawberry. Obviously, botrytis grey mould is a big issue in post-harvest strawberries. Also lentil and chickpea get a lot of foliar botrytis infections. And then outside of botrytis, we've got other partners working in canola, so sclerotinia. There's also, outside of agriculture, I guess, myrtle rust is a developing issue in Australia. So this is a rust spore that comes in and can colonise our native myrtle species. And so, yeah, there's a really wide range of plant, hosts and pathogens that we're working on.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Laurie Krauss and I'm a PhD candidate here with the Institute of Agriculture. And for those of you who do know me, I'm still Laurie Krauss. I haven't changed recently. So I'm looking at oxalis. Oxalis. If you mention oxalis to a grower who knows about oxalis, or mention it to a gardener who knows about oxalis, they're liable to get extremely emotional, scrunch up their face and say, I can't kill it. And it's causing a problem here in crops in the northwest. I'm not telling you anything you don't know here. As growers, we understand that weed control is really, really important because they do two things. They cause an incredible amount of damage, and then we have to repair that damage. And one of the things that weeds do is they outstrip the crop in many cases for light, for nutrients, for water and space. And sometimes you find that your crop actually doesn't survive very well. The other thing that's also happened is contamination. And last year there was an issue in the newspaper about some spinach from New South Wales that had been contaminated with a plant called thornapple, Datura. And I believe it's also a hallucinogenic plant, but it's highly poisonous. And what happened there was issues along the supply chain. So the spinach had to be pulled from the supermarket because of this contamination. And back up the supply chain, there were other issues as well. So here we have an example of oxalis and potatoes. I'm not quite sure what's actually going on here. I don't know whether this is oxalis in a potato crop or potato in an oxalis crop. But this is a real live example here in Tasmania of what can happen if this particular plant, as gorgeous as it is, if it's not controlled properly. So why did I decide to study oxalis? Well, one of the things that's happened is I've been talking to growers and industry and agronomists, and they have all said to me there's very poor control of this particular plant. We have no satisfactory answers, and I've had a lot of frustration from a lot of people. In 2004, a study was done here in Tasmania, actually here at Forthside, and it was found that there was no control with selective herbicides, cultivation or short fallows, and this plant is very clever at surviving. And one of the things relating to cost is that Tasmania spends close to $60 million a year on the war against weeds. So this thing here, this plant here, as gorgeous as it is, it's an enemy. So we need to find out a little bit more about this enemy and how can we actually find its weak spot so that we can control it. Now, after that survey and after that research was done, by the way, not survey, but research, there's been nothing done for 20 years here in Tasmania about oxalis. So where does it come from? Well, a bit of history about this plant. It actually originally came from Mexico, which is round about here. And it has many names. It has a very distinctive leaf shape, this particular oxalis. It's known as fish-tailed oxalis, pink oxalis, wood sorrel, and it has a few more names as well. But it's also called Oxalis latifolia. That's its scientific name. And it's spread around the world, as you can see. And if you notice something here, there's a pattern. It's in the subtropical and temperate areas in the southern hemisphere, and the subtropical and temperate areas in the northern hemisphere. And it loves Australia, and it loves New Zealand, and it loves Tasmania. So where is it here? So this is my first task. Excuse me, I have flying things around. So this is my first task. What I'm trying to do is find out what's the scope of the problem. How large is it? How widespread is it? Because we don't know. And one of the things that's really important is to get that baseline so that we know where it is, so that in 5 years' time, somebody can say, if they're doing more research on this particular weed, Laurie Krauss said in 2024 that it was in this location and this location, but we've now found it somewhere else. So what's going on? Now, this is a very clever plant. I think I've actually missed a slide. Just one moment. I have. It's a broadleaf plant and it grows from a bulb, which is very unusual in the plant kingdom. And if we have a look here, this is this bulb group down here, which is magnified here, and we can see more little bulbs growing. And if you've ever pulled oxalis out from the ground, all you get is a bunch of stalks with leaves on top. This is like getting a set of steak knives, but wait, there's more. It's very clever. It really wants to survive. And what it does is it produces tubers, and I dug this one up and you can see relative size. It also produces underground runners, and runners normally go across the surface of the soil. But this plant, desperate to survive, has put its runners underground. And guess what those runners produce? More bulbs. So we have a real challenge here. So very simply, when the time is right, the bulb germinates, produces shoots, and those shoots also photosynthesize. So we've got nutrients coming up from the bulb and nutrients being brought down from the photosynthetic leaves. The next thing that happens is with this plant here as an example, we've got nutrients going from the bulb and down from the leaves. So there's this two-way traffic within the plant. And then when the plant begins to die, underneath the ground, what have we found? More bulbs. So this is the challenge. I'm having trouble here. So this is the challenge, and this is where my research is based. Apart from finding out where it is, the critical time to defoliate is when those nutrients start travelling back down the stems, back into the underground structures. And at this point in time, we don't know where that is. So that's what I'm trying to find out. And if I can find that out, then we have a fairly good chance of actually controlling the plant. So the second part, or another part of my research, is how to optimise herbicide use. Herbicide won't work if we actually apply it at the wrong time, because if you actually defoliate this particular oxalis and it's not the right time, the herbicides haven't travelled back down into the bulb, what happens? This clever creature produces more leaves. And if you're a gardener and you've had oxalis in your garden and you pull it out, you'll probably know that. This bulb here, which is this bulb here, produced this plant. And since I took that photo, this is the plant from a small bulb. Now, that bulb produced 45 little bulblets, 45 little offspring. There was another clump of soil that I dug up that had a big bulb, its mother bulb, that produced 60 little bulbs. That's a potential within half a metre of 5,000 plants. So you can see why this is becoming, or could become, a very, very severe problem. Is there a silver bullet? Unfortunately, no. But the best we can do is find out how big the problem is, understand the weed growth, and exploit its weaknesses to see whether we control it.
You say it comes from Mexico. Have you looked there to see what's controlling it so that Mexico is not 6 foot deep in oxalis?
there doesn't seem, I haven't actually gone to Mexico. I mean, if you fund me to go to Mexico, I would happily go to Mexico. But no, it's very clever, this plant, because Mexico has both very hot climate and also very cold climate, depending on when you are. Now, this plant actually doesn't grow if it's very cool. It is quite dormant at about 4 degrees Celsius. How do I know that? Because I've got them in the bottom of my fridge at the moment. But there doesn't seem to be any natural enemy in its natural environment, unfortunately.
Most of the spread, I'm sure, has been around the state from nursery material. You could go into any nursery within a few k's of here and you'd find oxalis growing underneath an azalea, potted azalea or whatever the plant may be.
Unfortunately, we do. It's been...
That should be an easy fix to stop that. Just find out where that
No.
material's being put together and make sure that the...
Well, some of those bulbs, unfortunately, are very, very tiny and a couple of millimetres in length. And once it's got an opportunity to germinate, it likes to grow, unfortunately. It was spread around the world by humans, came into Tasmania around about the late 1800s, brought in as an ornamental, as a lot of our weeds have been, unfortunately. The answer to your question, really no, unfortunately.
It's quite easy to make an uncontaminated potting mix going forward.
Well, yes, it is, but...
No potting mix, we won't continue to spread it into every garden in the state.
I'm not making potting mix, but yes, true, it is. But depending on how potting mix is made, some suppliers of potting mix don't sterilise their potting mix, and I don't know whether the heat that they use for sterilisation for those that do would actually kill the bulb. You might have given me actually another task to have a look at.
Is it a declared noxious weed in Tasmania?
No, it hasn't, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure why. It's been under the radar for quite some time, but it's causing a lot of problems.
That might be the first step, to get it declared a noxious weed, and then we can control the spread of it.
For sure.
Have you looked into the viability of the bulbs? Is there a size at which they're too small to turn into a new plant, or is it if the bulb exists, it can be a plant?
I'm not sure. I have one of my plants down below here on the lectern stand is very, very small, and this one germinated because it happened to be the mother plant. This one germinated within 4 weeks. Another example I've got germinated within 7 weeks, and some of the very small bulbs haven't yet germinated. So I'm not sure.
They have copious amounts of flowers. Do they make any seed?
In France, apparently. Now, I don't know why France is different from what I've read in the literature. I'm not going to say no, it doesn't make seed, because there's a possibility, but I haven't seen this particular species make seed. I've seen other varieties of oxalis produce seed, but this one appears not to, and that's the best answer I can give, appears not to, because it's a plant, and you never know, the environment might be right, and all of a sudden we have latifolia, we have fishtail oxalis producing seed.
Thanks everyone for having this little opportunity to spruik the Tasmanian Agricultural Technology Guide that's recently been released by the TasFarm Innovation Hub. Before I talk about the guide, I just wanted to highlight who the TasFarm Innovation Hub are. We're a relatively new organisation in the Tassie ag landscape, so we're one of 8 national drought and innovation hubs funded through the Future Drought Fund from the federal government. The Tasmanian Hub is hosted by the University of Tasmania, so we sit within TIA. We also have 21 industry partners that are part of the hub, and an additional 12 project delivery partners that are delivering projects for us on the ground. We have a remit, 2 remits. Firstly is about working with the farming industry to build resilience for future droughts and climate challenges. And secondly is about enabling ag innovation on the ground here in Tasmania. So that's the area that I've been working in. I joined the hub in January as a knowledge broker and helping lead up our ag innovation program. So one of the projects that we have delivered with one of our hub partners, Beanstalk. AgTech this year has been looking at mapping how farmers are using AgTech in Tasmania to solve industry challenges. And the output of that has been the Tasmanian Agricultural Productivity Guide, Technology Guide, sorry. What we did with that piece of work was we looked at 4 industry sectors, so dairy, livestock, vegetables and fruit, and went out and consulted with farmers and industry service providers to really understand what are the challenges facing these industries, kind of prioritise these top challenges and or opportunities, and then looked at actually what tech options are farmers using to help solve those industry challenges. And the output of that has then been this technology guide, which we've recently launched, and really loving how the response we're getting from people about how they're using it. We've designed it to be a very practical resource. It's a snapshot in a point of time. We know that tech is a very evolving space, but really the way that I see this is a great opportunity to have conversations with the farming industry about how technology can help build future resilience and solve industry challenges. So as I mentioned, we looked at it from 4 industry sectors. We identified kind of the top 2 challenges for those industry sectors, but then it was actually emerged that there were some challenges that were common across all of them. So we've highlighted 3 shared challenges, which is very much about making data more accessible across the farm, reducing time, managing irrigation, getting more work-life balance back into the farming enterprise, into the farming businesses, and enhancing connectivity across farms. In specific to this room we're in today, the ones we looked at for vegetables, reducing input usage to improve margins, particularly with the rise of fertilisers, herbicides. All of our crop inputs are getting more expensive, and so we need to be using those in a more efficient and effective manner to improve our margins for our enterprises. And then the second one for vegetables is about optimising drainage. So quite interesting given that we're a drought and innovation hub, but what we often heard from farmers was that it's okay to get water on there, but often a lot of our vegetable production systems are really prone to waterlogging, and getting water off at the right time is quite challenging. So one of the shared challenges that we really dive into is about optimising drainage. So what we've done for each of these challenges is we've identified what the challenge is, spelled it out, and then looked at what tech solutions we can map to helping address those challenges. So taken examples from what farmers have shared with us, as well as looking at a global lens, but relevant to Tasmania. So we're not going to put tech in there that is not relevant to here. So there's a lot of great examples. We've got some examples of how looking at a value chain perspective in different aspects of the value chain, and how different technology options can help assist at different stages through the value chain. And I think one of the best parts about this guide is it's actually has case studies of actually how farmers in Tasmania have actually embraced technology to solve some of these challenges. So it's a really practical, useful guide. We've got printed copies at the TasFarm Innovation Hub trade display, so I encourage you to come up and grab a copy to take away with you. If you want to share it with others, it's also available on the TasFarm Innovation Hub website as an electronic version. So really happy to kind of have a chat to you guys about it, and maybe at future industry events we can spend a bit more time going into a bit more detail around what we found and how it applies to your different industry sectors.
Here's a picture of how we grow strawberries in Tasmania now, and in a lot of parts of Australia. They're grown in polytunnels. This is not exactly a polytunnel, but it's a protected cropping environment, and we grow them on these hydroponic tables. So the strawberries are just sitting here in coir, which is a coconut husk, and nutrient solution gets pumped through, and the strawberries grow really, really nicely. It's a really good system for Tasmania. And the berry industry is not huge in Tasmania, but it is growing, and it's becoming increasingly important to our economy. So in 2021, which is for the most recent data I could find on this, it was worth 209 billion. That's the total berry industry. Berries are one of the most valuable crops in Tasmania in terms of the value, the profit you get from them. The value, the berry sector is growing a lot. That's what I want to emphasize here. It might be a relatively small sector at the moment, but it's certainly growing. It grew 63% from 2020 to 21. So if you look at this 209 million figure, about 17 million of that is strawberries. So the rest being raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. So in Tasmania, we produced 3,110 million tonnes of strawberries in 2021. And the problem I want to talk about today is heat stress. So heat stress can cause yield loss of 15 to 25%. This is information I've gained through talking with growers throughout Tasmania. They've mentioned to me that this is a problem in Tasmania. It's this heat stress problem. So that means that we're missing out on about $2.5 to $4.2 million annually because of this heat stress problem. So to put a number on it, I'm looking at a $4 million problem here. But why is it a problem, right? Well, Tasmanian berries are bred for our cool climate, right? A lot of the berries we grow here in Tasmania were bred either in the UK or other parts of Europe where it's quite cool, or were bred by the Australian Strawberry Breeding Program for the temperate zone, which we sit in. So here you can see some berries grown on tables as before. But the problem is that Tasmania gets hot, right? We might not think about it too much because we spend a lot of time being cold, but it does get hot here in Tasmania. So here's a table just pulled from Wikipedia. You can see that the average high temperature in January and February, when we're really starting to harvest our berries, I mean, harvest starts back here, but we're still harvesting here, easily gets up to 25, and the record can be quite high. Now, this is a problem because from the growers I've talked to, you don't need much more than 25 to get a problem. And when you think about how berries are grown in these polytunnels, if it's 25 outside, it's going to be very hot inside that tunnel. So what are we doing about this problem? So I've only just started this research project, so I don't have any data to show you, sadly, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, right? The first step in any research project is to properly understand the problem. We need to understand why the berries are responding in this way when they get heat stressed. And to do that, I'm going to take a range of different approaches, but basically I'm going to look at how the plant changes biochemically when you stress it out, and how does gene expression change, right? So this sort of gets at the mechanism behind why the berries are ending up suffering from heat stress. So you've got to think about ripening as a suite of processes that need to happen all at once, right? The berries have got to get bigger, they've got to get redder, they've got to get sweeter, and they've got to get softer, right? When heat stress comes along, this ripening process tends to get kind of decoupled, right? So some of the problems that growers have told me about was the berries, they still get redder and they still get sweeter and they still get softer, but they end up very small. So the enlargement process has been interrupted somehow. Another problem growers have told me about is that the berries get bigger and they get sweeter, right? But by the time they're ready to pick, they're way too soft, right? So you end up with either soft fruit or small fruit, and this is obviously a big problem if you want to make money. You don't want to have to, if they're too small, you have to pick more berries to fill your punnet. If they're too soft, then supermarkets and other sellers don't want them. So once we understand the problem, then I'm going to start looking at, well, what are the current practices on farm that we could possibly change to ameliorate this problem? How can we fix this problem, right? So as I said before, we grow them in polytunnels, which is really good for a lot of things. It keeps pests out, it keeps birds from eating our crops, but it also contributes to how warm it is in the tunnel. So is there other things we can do in the way we grow them to just bring the temperature down in the tunnel? And maybe that's enough to solve the problem, right? Or maybe there's other ways that we could combat this. So once we've got an idea of what processes could be contributing to the heat stress, we can try and optimize that for on-farm management, and then we'll communicate those optimal practices to strawberry growers around Tasmania. The other thing we're going to look at is, as a berry grower, the last thing you want is another thing you have to do, right? Wouldn't it be much nicer to just have a berry that grows well in a cool climate and doesn't panic when it gets stressed? So that's another thing we're going to be looking at, right? What are the genetics behind this? Are there particular genes that we could breed, that could be breeding targets? that could give us that heat resistant but also cool climate kind of berry that we really want to grow here in Tasmania. And once we've got those gene targets, we then plan to breed new varieties of strawberry that will be good for cool climate, but will also be able to cope with those high temperatures. Now, to do this breeding work, I'm going to collaborate with the Australian Strawberry Breeding Program. In conversation with them, they've told me that heat tolerance for their temperate varieties is a big target for them. It's pretty much the main target that they're after. So this is not only a problem recognised by me and other growers in Tasmania, but also the National Breeding Program. So strawberries is a new area of research for TIA. So I've actually had to work hard to get a lot of things sort of up and off the ground. I say me, but I really mean Doug. Doug has done a lot of work around the farm to make this not only a vegetable research facility, but also a fruit research facility. I'm really happy that he's been really on board and really excited about this work. So he's actually built some hydroponic tables for me to grow strawberry plants in. And you can go and see them later on the farm walks. And we've got some new growth chambers at the TIA research facility in Launceston, which I can use to very tightly control the climate around my berries, which enable me to do my experiments to figure out what is going on, what is causing this problem with ripening. And I just want to say a quick thank you to the various growers that I've spoken with, particularly Pinata and Buried in Tas. These growers have been really great to work with, really open with sharing their knowledge and trying to point me in the right direction about problems that need solving. And thank you all for listening.
If you are able to control the temperature of the nutrient film that is cooler, then does that assist with the stress?
Yes, I think so. I don't know though, right? I just know what growers have told me, and they've said, yeah, when it gets too hot, that's their words, too hot. And usually by too hot, they mean 25 to 30 degrees. And I assume that means in tunnel. That's when they start to experience the stress. So because you've got that controlled environment, yeah, there's a lot of scope there for doing things in the tunnel that could ameliorate the stress like straight away. Yeah, without worrying about the breeding stuff. Yeah. So. Yep.
Wondering, with the breeding component, are you looking at other factors like flavour and suitability of, marketing and shelf life and those type of things?
Yeah, for sure. So there's reasons that berry growers in Tasmania grow the berries that they do, and we don't want to lose any of those good qualities when we go after this heat tolerance as well. So we'll be trying to maintain all of that stuff as well. Yep. So one more, yeah.
Whilst it's not specifically related to the growing of the berries, about 5-6 years ago I did some work and calculated that there was about 1.2 million of the Koya grow bags being used once.
Yeah.
All of this, the vast majority is coming out of Sri Lanka. I'm wondering whether there's any research being done into the recycling of that one source. And also the nutrient value of both the plant and the Koya.
That is so important. Not by me, but I have colleagues from different parts of the world who are very, very interested in the whole growth media problem, right? It's a big problem for ag, particularly if we're doing it hydroponically. So that's a really important area of research, but I can't say anything in particular about it.
One other big area of research that TIA has undertaken at the moment is work on traditional Chinese herbs and for traditional Chinese medicine. And in fact, Doug Clarke and the team here have been really supportive of that work. And we have a student as part of that program. That program has 7 PhD students, and one of the students is here, Celia van Sprang, and she's going to present to us her research on the agronomic principles of growing different traditional Chinese herbs. So welcome, Celia.
Thanks, Nige. I'm Celia. I'm a PhD candidate with TIA, and I'm based over at the Launceston campus over at Newnham. And before I get started, I just want to say this project is part of a much larger project which is supported by the Australian Education Management Group and is partnered with the Nanjing University of Traditional Chinese Medicine over in China. And as Nigel mentioned, there are 7 of us PhD students all working with a series of different traditional Chinese herbs that are important in that industry. But I have the immense pleasure of working with one of the prettiest ones, the herbaceous peony species, the Paeonia lactiflora. So, as you may or may not know, Tasmania already successfully grows peonies for the cut flower sector, and as a result, there are many varieties of a lot of different species of Paeonia, but the focus being Paeonia lactiflora. There are quite a lot of varieties of those as well, and that is demonstrated in this one photo of one block on one farm over in Nyetta. There's about 10 different lactiflora varieties just in that one photo. I was there last week, and that is all just colour at the moment. It's peak picking season. But that kind of presented a little bit of a challenge, because the first thing I had to do was sort of work out a baseline to find out if the peonies that we grow here in Tasmania were actually viable for traditional Chinese medicine. So I had to kind of work out where to begin. And to do that, we just have to backtrack a little bit, hopefully. Okay, so this is a rhizome of a Paeonia lactiflora variety that is grown in Tasmania. They're perennial plants, so they have a crown, they have the fleshy roots, and they also have the shoots as well. So this is where it all kind of starts. And as we know, we grow them here in Tasmania for this. These bouquets of peony blooms, and they come in a range of different colours. Oh, there we go. So yes, we grow them for the cut flower market. But for Chinese medicine, the priority is not the flowers, it's actually the roots, which is where the main medicinal component or quality marker is present, known as peony florin. There's a series of volumes that is commissioned by the Chinese government called the Chinese Pharmacopoeia, which lists a series of several hundred, I think, different herbs, their quality markers, and prescribed analytical methods, as well as the prescriptions that they are a part of as well. For peony roots, with peony florin as the quality marker that is present in the roots and exclusive to the Paeonia species. The minimum threshold for quality is between 1.2 and 1.6%, depending on the form. So the 1.2 pertains to the white peony root, which is washed, peeled, boiled, processed, dried, etc. And the 1.6% pertains to the red peony root, which is essentially just washed, sliced and dried with the bark of the root still present. So what I had to then do is go to various farms here in Tasmania and a few in Victoria and take some samples and analyse them for this compound, peony florin, to basically work out A, if the compound is present, and B, if it's present in enough concentration. And the great news is that by and large it is. So these are various varieties that were harvested from these farms. The two red lines are those two thresholds, and most of them do actually hit that minimum or above. So that allowed me to select 3 different varieties to work with for my projects, and then I can happily proceed on with the rest of my PhD project with this species. So through literature research and through consultations with the growers and various experts and peers within the TCM Research Hub, I was able to narrow down to a few different research questions. As a research agronomist by background, there's one on fertiliser applications, there's one on general agricultural practice, and we're going post-farm gate as well, looking at post-harvest elements as well, and there's a pilot study being done over at Mount Pleasant as well. So I'll go through them all one by one. So experiment 1 is based on nitrogen fertiliser, because what I did find out through my reading and through talking to various TCM experts that general agricultural practice over in China does give recommendations on fertiliser applications for the peonies for TCM, but it's more along the lines of 500 kilos per hectare of cow manure or a compound fertiliser, etc. It doesn't really give an elemental amount of how much nitrogen is actually put on or how much phosphorus, etc. So and there's not a lot of work being done on how much of a particular nutrient has an effect on the root chemistry, which is what this project is about. So I'm looking at varying rates of urea to see if it elicits a response on the root chemistry, as well as a biomass study in January as well. So the second experiment is a little bit different. In China, it's general practice to remove the flower buds of the peonies and various other flowering Chinese herbs to encourage the resources and energy of the plant from flower bud and stem development to root development, root chemistry, as part of a defence response, as well as reallocating those resources. So the aim, and it looks a bit counterintuitive when you look at the fact that here in Tasmania we grow these for the flowers, but actually this is a good opportunity to work out if the growers, if it's viable for the growers to be removing the buds, and whether or not they can just proceed as business as usual with the varieties that are actually sufficient for Chinese medicine. Next one. So with this one, we're going beyond the farm gate and into the post-harvest sort of realm, where I'm looking at the processing methods and its effects on the root chemistry. So after the peony roots are harvested, they tend to get washed, and general practice is either boiling or steaming. Some of them get peeled for white peony root production as well. But there's an opportunity to observe how other processing methods might affect the chemistry of the peony root during the process, and one of them is sous vide, which I think most of you might know. It's basically cooking in a plastic bag under controlled conditions for a prescribed amount of time, and I'll be looking at those methods side by side, and then they'll be dried, and then there's an opportunity also to take it that one step further. So we have an electronic tongue analysis instrument based at Newnham, which basically, without the need for humans and a tasting panel, is able to analyse a taste profile of a solution. So things like sourness, bitterness, sweetness, etc. And taste is one of the other quality parameters, I guess you can say, for Chinese medicine as well. So there's a real opportunity to have a look at how these basic processing methods have an effect on the taste profile as well as these herbs are consumed. And then there's a little pilot study being done over at Mount Pleasant alongside the nitrogen trial, where I'll be looking at the effect of applications of varying rates of a defence hormone to, induce the peony fluorine in the roots. So the defence hormone that I'll be using is already part of the plant chemistry, and peony fluorine is what is known as a secondary metabolite. So there are reports that it does increase in concentration under times of stress. So this is one of the ways that we're looking at increasing the accumulation and production of peony fluorine in the roots. And so the aim for this is to provide insight to other potential tools for growers that they might be able to use it in the field if they choose to produce peonies for TCM. So hopefully after this pilot study is done, hopefully I can take it to a much larger level. This is the team, the TCM Research Hub, a very supportive group of people, and they're all doing a fantastic work. There's quite a variety of different crops that are being studied in this particular research. So yeah, you'll be able to see some on the farm walk as you go around as well later on. And then just a few quick acknowledgements to the peony growers for letting me taking samples, and for the phone calls asking for information on how to grow peonies as well. The TCM Research Hub, of course, for support and knowledge. My supervisors, Dr. Alita Isles, Professor Dougal Close, and Dr. Matthew Wilson. AEMG, Nanjing University of Chinese Medicine, Mount Pleasant Laboratories, and of course, on behalf of the group, I'd like to thank the Forthside Research Facility, Doug, Anne-Marie, Catherine, and Ant for looking after all all of our experiments over here at Forthside. And that's it, I think. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Celia?
What's the end product going to be worth?
That's a great question. I might handball that to Dougal if you talk to him later. But it's likely that, the Chinese medicine market's massive, but at the moment I don't have any figures for that right now, but hopefully that'll come in the future.
Is there a gap in the market? Can they not produce enough themselves?
Well, at the moment there's quite a few reports on a lot of strain and inconsistent quality of certain Chinese herbs that are being produced in China. So with climate similarities for some herbs between Tasmania and China, it poses quite a large opportunity for Tasmanian growers to veer into that sort of space. So with the number of herbs that are being researched in this particular project, I think there'll be a lot of information come out of at the end.
Sophie.
Celia, how do you see it working in an existing peony production businesses here in Tassie? Like obviously they're set up for cut flower market. This is quite a different product, and I think would obviously need different management if you're trimming off the flowers and things.
Yeah.
How do you would growers be growing different crops? One for flowers, one for...
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and something that these experiments are looking to answer. It is a proof of concept work at this stage, but between fertiliser management and bud removal, etc., and the fact that we do grow these ornamental varieties that do produce these amounts of peony flora for Chinese medicine, there's an opportunity for us to really work out whether growers need to set aside a block of a particular variety or cultivar for Chinese medicine, or whether or not they can, I guess, coincide with that sort of management difference, because at the moment picking is happening here in Tasmania. It's actually tailing off now because it's been early, but with harvest of the roots, it tends to happen around about end of summer into autumn for that sort of peak time for the chemistry. So it actually happens at different times of the year. So there's not too much of a crossover for the management in that regard. But I had one grower ask me about that question, and he said if we're working on varieties that are less valuable than the current popular cut flower varieties, that's even better, because that means they can grow the less valuable cut flower varieties for Chinese medicine. So there's that opportunity as well.
Can you harvest without killing the plant?
In China, they grow the plant for about 4 or 5 years. They'll lift it at harvest time. They'll take off the marketable roots and then they'll replant it. So that in itself, it's quite, it disturbs the plant, the soil, etc. But it works well for them, and that happens for a few years until they move on to the next block. So yeah.
One last question.
Is the essential oil also marketable?
Oh, good question. For some peony species, they use the seeds for oils, and I think it's for a food and cosmetics as opposed to Chinese medicine. But I'm happy to be corrected if there's someone here who knows more about that. But from what I've read, they do use the essential oils from the seeds as opposed to from the roots.
It's quite interesting being here today for the 60th anniversary. I was actually here 30 years ago and did my high school work placement here for 2 weeks with Frank Mulcahy, who's sitting down the back at the moment. So to be here for the 60 years is good, and congratulations to all those involved. So we're a family farm at East Sassafras. That's myself, my parents, my wife and kids from a few years ago now. Some have grown up and everyone's got a bit older since then. So we're running a 220 hectare. We crop vegetables for processing. So we've got peas, potatoes. We also do poppies. We do grass seed for valley seeds and through SurveyAg. We grow other seed crops at times, but we also are into fresh market sweet corn, fresh market celeriac, and we run sheep and cattle. So we're a fairly diverse operation for the size that we are. Mum and Dad moved up to where we are 43 years ago now from Bruny Island. So it was a fairly major change leaving down there and basically a dry land cropping and beef cattle operation to fairly intensive vegetable production with irrigation, and it's been a pretty steep learning curve for himself and myself as the time's gone on. A few years ago we were growing potatoes for McCain's, and we were lucky enough to be involved in their major cutbacks when they went through and cut everybody off. So through that we started looking at our fresh market side of things. We were growing the celeriac. You want to flick to the next one? So through the change, yep, that one will do. We started producing sweet corn. We used to grow sweet corn for McCain's when they were growing processing sweet corn. My father was very involved in the vegetable industry and the Sweet Corn Council at the time. So going back to it wasn't that big of a deal. But it all came around, sort of stepped off with the celeriac that we grow, which there'll be a photo of that come up shortly. I went to AgFest, and a friend of mine was managing TasFresh, a wholesale company at the time, and he threw me this ugly looking bulb and he said, "You should grow it." And I went, "Oh, it's all good, I'll just keep talking, they'll sort it out." Threw me this ugly looking bulb and he said, "You should grow it, I reckon it'll go well." And I went, "That's fine, what is it?" And through that we had the conversations with them. We talked to Hills Transplants and started off putting 1,500 bulbs in by hand. So that's celeriac, basically. So we started supplying that to local greengrocers and restaurants and anybody else I could talk into taking it and trying, basically. And now we're up to, we actually peaked at producing 65,000 bulbs for the season. We were supplying the Melbourne market, but then logistical issues flared up with that. So now we just produce 15,000 bulbs and everything is sold within the Tasmanian market at this point. But we have been approached by a couple of greengrocers in Melbourne who are keen to take it. So that'll be an interesting step for this season. But through those conversations, we went into one of the local greengrocers and the lady said there, "Oh, you should grow sweet corn. We can't get local sweet corn." So yeah, we gave it a go. We went back to it. We tried it about 15 years ago before all that kicked off, but we just didn't have time to put into it properly. So we struggled with the logistics of the harvest and maturity and all those sort of fun things. So when we weren't growing the potatoes and we had to look for something else, growing potatoes takes a fair bit of time. So once we got rid of that, we actually had the time to look into things properly. So we started growing sweet corn for the fresh market. Started off just selling small volumes to local greengrocers. Then managed to pick up a few IGAs. We go to the harvest market in Launceston and Farmgate market in Hobart. Start supplying restaurants. So we supply Joseph Cromie, Grainer Silos, Tamba, and quite a few places in Hobart. And through that, I had a conversation with one of the chefs and he said, "Can you get baby corn?" And I said, "Well, I'll just pick some immature corn. That's not a problem." That first slide that came up was basically what the baby corn is. So we just pick the whole cob as a baby cob, deliver it to them, and they cook it. They do what they need to do with it. And it went really well. And I said to him, "Right, well, I'll try and find an actual baby corn variety." So through talking with different seed suppliers and those sort of things, we managed to find a baby corn variety. It's all right, I'm probably not helping because I'm jumping backwards and forwards, so it makes it very hard to follow when you're just guessing the photos. So that's the normal sweet corn on the left, obviously a baby corn cob. Your left, baby corn cob on the right. And through that, we actually discovered that the baby corn variety that we started growing was a popcorn variety. So I had a lady at the harvest market who produces popcorn flavourings and salts, and she came up to me and went, "Can you grow popcorn?" And I went, "I don't know, we'll give it a shot." So a bit of research into things and looking for seed, and discovered that the Snow Baby variety that I was already growing as a baby corn was actually a superseded popcorn variety. So then we started not harvesting everything and we just let it go through to dry, and that's basically what the hard yellow cob is a full cob of the baby corn grown through to be a popcorn product. So it's sort of been a progression of discussions and the progression of, well, I don't know, but we'll give it a shot. It's just another corn plant, we should be able to grow it. talking to people on the mainland, I managed to get hold of a gentleman who was in New South Wales. I spent 20 minutes talking to him about popcorn, and I think I learnt more about popcorn in that 20 minutes than I reckon I knew my entire life, and probably will do again, because his knowledge on it was just phenomenal. So that gave us principles to work on the small scales that we had. You want to go to the next one if you can? I think the next one. So, yep, so that's the baby corn. The one before was we harvest the sweet corn in the husk. So once it's dried down to a point that we can harvest it, we take the whole cob off. Then it involved hand stripping the husk off it. Then we used to hand strip the kernels off to start with, just to see how it'll work. That's not a fun job, I'll tell you that right now. It wears thin very quickly and you end up with a lot of blisters on your thumbs, and child slave labour only goes as far as you can bribe them. So we started off with just a hand mechanical winder, and now I've actually got a drum with agitators in it that we can just put the popcorn in and walk away from for 3 hours. And when we come back, it's knocked all the kernels off. We basically put it under a fan to blow all the dust out, and we've got a product that we can just bag up and sell. Biggest issue with popcorn is the moisture. You've got to be a very precise moisture level. The bags of popcorn you get, the ones that don't pop at all are too dry. The ones that pop a little bit are too wet. So what it is, it's actually the pressure inside the kernel from the moisture, and when it gets to a certain point, it explodes. And when you've got the right amount of moisture in there, it explodes into a popcorn kernel, whatever you want to call it. So it's very fussy stuff. I've trialled different varieties and had a lot of trouble trying to get them to do, because Tassie being the climate it is, and trying to harvest popcorn in the end of March, early April, you struggle to get your moisture content down a bit. I'm going to try for another one. So that's just the sweet corn. That's actually, even though it's decided to flip itself sideways, that's how I was drying it to start with. That's actually a semi-commercial dehydrator. So trying to get the balance of dehydrating it properly, which when you check it at 12 o'clock and it's too wet, and then you check it at 1 o'clock and it's too dry, took a little bit of trial and error, but we've actually discovered now that we're better to harvest last year's, literally put it in a container and let it just dry itself ambiently, and then it generally seems to settle at around that 13% moisture that it needs by itself without us trying to dry it too much. So we just discovered we had to take the time to do it properly. You try and rush things and things get difficult, but the popcorns are really good. It's good for these sort of situations. It's something we can do, but it's something I struggle with time to actually market efficiently. When we go into the farmers markets, I can sell it hand over fist because I'm there interacting with them, but when it comes to actually putting it in a packet and taking it to a supermarket, that's well out of my comfort zone. So it's something we're slowly building into, and hopefully in the future you'll see it in supermarkets nearby. What else have we got there? So this is a drone shot of one of our sweet corn patches from a few years ago. So we stagger plant. So I plant usually from around the 10th of October through till Christmas time. Anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks between plantings, just depending on what time of year it is, how quickly it's coming up. But I usually let it germinate and get up about 30, 40 mils high before I plant the next one. And that seems to work for us harvesting through. So we hand harvest everything. It's actually worked out to be the most cost-effective way of us to do it, because it means we can get multiple picks off sections. We can hand grade as we're going, so we're not bulk harvesting and then having to spend all our time grading a product that we just throw away because we can't sell it. If we have a product that's not, a cob that's not mature enough, we just leave it and we'll pick it again in a few days' time. So the cross marks, that's how we work out where we are, because I don't know if any of you have walked through a sweet corn paddock, but it's very easy to get lost. And when you're picking corn, we pick into apple picking bags. When you're picking and your bag's full and you realise you're 50 metres away from the bin you've got to put it in, it's a very long walk back. So we usually cut out 10 metre sections. So yeah, you can see we've progressively gone across through that. The right hand side here at that time was some of the baby corn. There was a wet patch there, which is why it didn't germinate properly, but I actually had Matt Adams at Tamba was cooking for the Telstra Business Awards that are at the Cataract Gorge. So he actually ordered 1,500 baby corn cobs off me for that one function. Was one of those conversations we had in the middle of the year, and he said, "Oh, do you reckon you'll be able to supply it?" And I went, "Oh yeah, we should be able to make something work." And then the 2 weeks out, and I'm looking at all the baby corn that's not quite ready because it was too wet and too cold, and I'm going, "Oh shit, how are we going to do this?" But yeah, we made it work, and he was happy with it. And through that, I've discovered that chefs are a lot like farmers. They talk a lot. If they've got a good product, one chef will talk to the next chef, and suddenly you're getting phone calls from somebody else, and they're very decisive with their product. They'll walk up. I had Vince Trim, who's one of the head chefs at Mona, came up to me at the harvest market in Hobart, and he looked at a cob of the baby corn I had, and he said, "Oh, how much have you got?" And I said, "Oh, well, what do you really want?" And he ordered 500 pieces right then and there. So they know what they want. If you're producing a good product, they talk to each other, and the sales come. And just through putting yourself out there and having the conversations with different chefs and going to different places, I've got markets that I never would have thought I'd get. If somebody had said to me 5-6 years ago I'd be supplying some of the top restaurants in Launceston and Hobart with a fresh produce, I would have laughed at them. But that's what you've got to do. And the product we can produce in Tassie is so far superior to a lot of what comes out of the mainland because of the slow growing, the flavour in it. I always know when sweet corn has started coming out of Queensland and hitting the shops down here because people start ringing me saying, "When's my corn going to be ready?" I literally had a phone call on the day I planted saying, "Can I get some sweet corn?" I went, "Not till February sometime," which you're dealing with these people every year. So it's always interesting that they don't seem to realise what you're actually doing, but that's just what it is. They said, "Oh, there's local corn, there's fresh corn come in. We should be able to get the local stuff soon." And then you've got to just talk to them and go, "Well, no, sorry, our season's just from February to April like we've done for the last 5 years, but that's all right. That's just what you deal with." There we go. So yeah, the celeriac, that's something that we've grown. It's very labour intensive. So we harvest everything. Basically, we walk along and select the bulbs and harvest. We just use a shovel to cut the roots off underneath and then hand trim. And then we literally just wash it with a pressure cleaner. When we were doing bulk amounts to the mainland, we actually made a lifter ourselves that was just cutting the roots off because that bulb, what you can see there is 3 times as much under the ground in the way of little fibrous roots. And actually sometimes pulling them out of the ground is very nearly impossible. So we trim with that machine or with a shovel, hand trim, pack, and we supply the bulb as it stood in that last photo. So what have we got next? So that's just one of the stalls we have at the harvest markets. So it's nothing fancy, but you let the produce do the talking. We have people come up every year saying, "Oh, this is some of the best corn I've ever eaten. Yeah, we can't grow it like this at home," and all those sort of things. "Oh, what do you do differently?" And I went, "Not much, because we just plant it and just deal with the bulk area." But variety selection and those sort of things, which I've had a bit to do with, and build up relationships with seed suppliers and stuff on the mainland has been a big step. But probably the biggest thing we've got here is having a good produce, being prepared to put your name behind it and actually put yourself to it, and be prepared to have conversations with people and go from there. There's some things people have come up to me and said, "Oh, you should grow this." I'll just go, "No, I haven't got time to deal with that at the moment." But there's other things they come up and they go, "Oh, I reckon you could do this." And you go, "Oh yeah, no, I'll look into that. I'll give it a go." It's being prepared to have a go, which Tassie farmers are known for being innovative and actually getting in and having a crack. So that's the main thing. Just be prepared to give it a go and see where you end up. And yeah, here I am from working here 30 years ago as a 15-year-old, which sort of shows my age, but more shows what how old Frank is now. To standing here presenting on what we're doing on our property, and yeah, it's good to see. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Matthew?
Righto.
Rotations. How often do you have rotations?
They just tie in with the normal rotation, so 3 to 4 years for the paddocks.
Do you use the waste product as fodder?
No, or we don't. We had a bloke picking for us who was taking any leaves and any leftover cobs, taking home to feed his pigs. But because we stagger plant, you've only got small areas, so it's not actually worth silaging or doing anything with it too much. So we usually literally just mulch it back into the ground and put it back into the soil.
And last question, marketing to the supermarkets, you said you're not that comfortable with that at this point in time. So are you just going to learn how to do it yourself, or are you going to get an agent? If so, are there agents that can help you with that?
Yeah, well, I took the first step. I got involved with Hazel McTavish West with Seed Lab, and she helped me develop packaging for the popcorn. That was the big step. I did what I thought was a relatively good label up and sent to her, and she rang me back and we were talking about it, and I said, before she said anything, I said, yeah, look, the more I've looked at it, the worse it's getting, so how about we just scrap that and start again? And she went, I'm glad you realised that, because I was going to say the same thing. So they've come up, and I couldn't actually find a photo to put up of what we're packaging now. So we've actually got a packaging set up. It's more the margins, and the biggest issue I've got is because what we're doing is such a labour-intensive thing, my cost production is so much higher than what they're buying it out of the mainland for. So I'm working on trying to get my cost of production down so I can reduce that price point, which means I've got more chance of getting it in at a sort of mid-range level as opposed to a boutique high-value product. So, yeah, it's that sort of balancing act that I'm trying to sort out at the moment.
Any more questions for Matthew?
Are you doing any organic trials?
This year we're actually looking at using beneficial wasps to control Heliothis, because Heliothis is one of our biggest issues. First year we grew, we tried to grow it spray-free, and I reckon we honestly put anywhere up to 70% of our crop back on the ground because it wasn't a saleable product. And then we started chasing with chemicals to try and control it and managed to salvage what we could. But there's actually a push, Natural Solutions, I think is the company off the top of my head. They are producing beneficial wasps that you put into your crop that will actually target the Heliothis grub. So we're going to trial that this year to see how we go. As I said to our agronomist, I said, worst comes to worst, we can chase it with sprays if we need to try and get it back. But a situation like that, because we hand pick, and I have this conversation with a lot of people at farmers markets, they go, oh, do you use chemicals? And I said, well, we have to control it. I said, but what you've got to realise is we hand pick everything. So whatever goes on the crop goes on me before it goes to something that you're going to eat. And I'm not going to risk killing myself just to feed you. So, yeah. Righto.
One last final question for Matthew.
Is this payback, is it?
The back there.
Yeah, Matthew, I'm just wondering, how do you think your work experience of 30 years has contributed into making you the fine young man?
Honestly, having 2 weeks not working with my father was a great step up. No, honestly, coming here and looking at the variations and the different things that happened within the farm and that sort of stuff was certainly, it's something that makes you think, because instead of just being on the one place that you're looking at the same things every time, you're looking at the diversity that you can do within a small area, and it makes you think about what production you can fit onto your farm at a larger area and being prepared to give small things a go and build from there.
Right, we're going to have a panel discussion now, and firstly to Anthony. Anthony, this year our theme for the Forthside Field Day is growing value for cool climate horticulture. Can you give us a bit of an update on what Hort Innovation is doing to grow the value of horticulture for growers across Australia?
Are we on? Yep. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Nigel, for that, and well done on pulling today's event together. It's been fantastic. So for those who aren't aware of who Hort Innovation is, we're the Grower Research Development Corporation, run by growers for growers, and we invest in research and development programs and in some cases marketing initiatives to support primary producers across Australia. We're very fortunate here in Tasmania for our vegetable industries to have 7 representatives from Simplot, from Harvest Moon and others who provide us advice and direction in terms of what are those key challenges keeping industry up at night. I'm very fortunate. I get to travel around the country and speak to a number of growers, and three things are very consistent from growers that I speak to. The first relates to addressing labour challenges on farm. The second relates to reducing inputs and complexity in farming environments. And the third area is maintaining strong biosecurity and also growing trade opportunities for Australian producers. And here in Tasmania, we're very fortunate. On the mainland, you've got varroa mite. It's not down here. On the mainland, you've got fruit fly. It's not down here. So how can we ensure we support research to, underpin, productive and thriving Tasmanian and national sector?
Thanks, Anthony. Caitlin, you established a farming operation here in sort of this heartland of the northwest area. What's given you the confidence to do that and go about setting up that operation?
Yeah, I think I'm fifth generation myself, so I don't think a business or a family in the area gets to the fifth generation without being there some sort of success and sustainability as well. So not only have we got the soils that we have, which we're so lucky, the location in which we find ourselves, obviously with Research Farm here and all the other local businesses as well. We've got the Spirit of Tas just here as well. So we've got endless opportunities with what we can achieve. Obviously there's a lot of processing crops, but then there's a lot of specialised and fresh market stuff like what Matt's doing as well. So it just proves that we've got berries, there's just everything. We've got wine around as well now, which is good. And I think it really just shows us that we can go wherever we like, and we know that we've got the support and the research and the consultants around us to help make it happen as well. And last year I was fortunate to go over to Scandinavia, which was really an eye-opening experience as well. And over there I visited a 12th generation fish farm, and I think over there the thinking is a little bit different, but still comes from that same family and community that we experience here in Tasmania. So it proves that we can do whatever we like. And obviously with biosecurity, and we're a little bit sheltered here from everything that we could be exposed to on the mainland, it's really awesome.
Oh, thanks, Caitlin. Hey, look, one of the reasons why we had Nathan talking about berries is because berries in Tasmania has expanded rapidly over the last decade, and we have Cam Folder with us now. And Cam, really like to hear your perspective about what advantages, just like Caitlin's been saying, I guess, does Tasmania have for the continued growth of the berry sector for Tassie and Cool Climate Hort?
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. I think in terms of horticulture in general, the obvious advantages Caitlin's just touched on of climate and water and soil underpin the opportunity. But I think if you think about Australia and the Australian market, we have this market situation where you have we use the latitude of the country to produce produce year round. Now that's a bit contrary to what Matt's approach on marketing, which is fine, but we do see across the country in the sector products, and berries is probably one of the better examples where we want to put something on the shelf 52 weeks of the year, and Tasmania plays a really important part of that, being the summer production and the best place for summer production of a lot of these crops. And that's one example, and there's quite a number of other examples, that in fresh fruit and vegetables, that means that opportunity really does exist. Continued growth of the berry sector will be a challenge as we sort of have grown rapidly and now start to reach a more mature point. But I think Tasmania is still underpinned by that good climate, which puts us in good stead. I'd much rather be growing my strawberries under tunnels in East Devonport, where we have a very temperate climate coming off the sea, than trying to contend with heat in the Yarra Valley or Victoria, for example.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Doug, you're at that interface between sort of industry and what we do here on a research farm. What innovations do you see as the next sort of step for us to be thinking about for step change growth in horticulture?
I'm just a humble farm manager.
You always say that.
Not control of funding or anything like that. What we do see is trends, I suppose. So we've certainly seen in my time here a decrease
of use of site through vegetables. No offence to the Hort funding guys, like I don't want to tread on any toes or anything there, but we've certainly seen a decrease in that, but also an increase in grains. We're lucky here where 60 odd years ago we were bread and butter, so we were pretty basic pea varieties, potato varieties a little bit later on, certainly development of industries in way of poppies, pyrethrum as well to a slightly lesser extent. So it's great to be in a spot where we can be a part of that and you'll learn from that. And yeah, whether it be a researcher or industry people using the site and say, well, look, here's something a bit different. How do we grow it? I've got no idea. Let's just have a play and see what we can do. So, and that's where we're at with the Chinese herbs. Like, and one of the best part of the jobs is you get to see and grow all these different varieties, like whether it be sweet corn or hemp or onions or whatever it is. Like you get to grow that, whereas in commercial land you don't always get exposure to that. You might have trends. I mean, yeah, sure, we've gone through our tech upgrade. And that's fantastic for us, like so labour savings and everything like that, energy savings, water savings and the like. That's no different to what commercial industry's been through. Yeah, I think the next step for industry is going to be in genetics, plant genetics, non-GMO, but in way of actually tweaking what's available. Certainly climate's changing and, yeah, we've got to do that better, I think. Who knows? And that's one of the best part of the jobs. You don't know what's going to come on the table.
Absolutely. Caitlin, you already mentioned the word sustainability, and I guess one of the questions that I've got from a growth in the cool climate sort of, I guess, sector is to do that growth sustainably and profitably. How do you go about achieving that on your farm?
Yeah, I think it's come full circle from talking with my pop and they farmed because it's what their fathers did and it carried on, and the business side of the farm wasn't necessarily considered as much. Whereas now, obviously, you've got to be profitable, otherwise what's the point in doing it? And as much as we love it, and I wouldn't do anything else in the world, I have to be able to run a profitable business to be able to sustain the lifestyle and be able to give my kids one day the upbringing that I was fortunate to have. So we've got to be really looking at what we're doing, obviously crop rotations, because we grow so many different things with brassicas and root crops and everything else. We've got to make sure that we can do that without creating more disease in our soil. Working with our agronomists with new trials and things that they have, so we might be able to reduce chemicals or go to safer chemicals. Look at fertilisers and synthetic fertilisers that we're using, see if we can back them off, which is introducing variable rate and that sort of thing. So last year we put a couple of new pivots on a farm that we purchased, and one of them we made it full variable rate because we'd love to head down that direction. Got to get a little bit more money from the bank before we can fully implement that in our business, but it's just striving to be better and better. And I'm only in my 4th season on the farm, and hopefully I've got many, many seasons ahead, but it's just trying to do a little bit better every season because the season actually goes so fast. Like, we're already halfway through the season. I've had 3 crops be harvested already, and I'm like, crikey, that time just flew. It was like we were only planting a couple of days ago. So we've just got to really make sure that we're on top of it, utilising technology, utilising local consultants and everything that we can get our hands on. Funding, been lucky with RMCG and primary employers and Hort Innovation as well to secure some funding. Weather stations with Merrick up the back, we've got 3 weather stations on our farm now, so we're really trying to utilise that and get that up and going. But it's just doing everything that you possibly can and having it in the back of your head. For us, generational farming is very special to me, but it doesn't take away at all from what other people do. And I know that no matter what business they are, they're generational or not, they're trying to achieve the same thing and just trying to have that end goal of being as sustainable as we possibly can.
No, thanks. Cam, you touched on before about continued growth in the berry sector. How does sustainability and profitability go hand in hand for your operation?
I think in the long term, it's obviously critical. I guess in the short term, the link isn't that strong. And there's examples in the berry industry, not in Tasmania, where people are making good money and not doing it in a sustainable or an environmentally sustainable way. So you sort of question what the driver is. And I'm lucky in the organisation that I work in and the people that I work with that everybody is very focused on producing in a sustainable way. And I'd suggest that the berry industry in Tasmania likewise is of that mindset, but there's no commercials. Well, they are, but that drive that, but they're not that immediate or short term or strong. So, I think in order for it to keep going, we'll have to have the same mindset that Caitlin's just talked about. We know it's the right thing to do. We know it's a long-term goal, and we have to keep going with it. We also have to try and hold our industries to account to uphold those standards.
Yeah. Anthony, you have a major role in overseeing production sustainability in Hort Innovation. What do you think industry needs to consider when it comes to sustainability for the future?
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. Look, one of the recurring themes I hear from industry all the time is show us the impact of our R&D program, show us the net benefits, show us where we can implement change. And I think that's front and centre of all the activity that we do. And we're very fortunate with TIA and the relationship that we have. We heard a number of presenters this morning talk through initiatives in pest and disease management, and then the new Hort Frontiers investment in cool climate horticulture. One of the areas that I mentioned is around labour challenges, and I'm really pleased today to announce that we will be entering into a small partnership with Startup Bootcamp Australia, which is looking at global innovations in areas to address labour productivity and labour challenges on farm. It builds on some of the fabulous work that Sophie outlined earlier today around what technologies already available, and in such a rapidly changing environment, we really need to look not just in our backyard but globally and repetitively in terms of what's on the horizon, and this is a horizon scan, and we're very open for industry, growers and others to if they wish to participate. I'm more than happy to have a chat today, and my colleague Adrian Hunt, who's down on the right-hand side at the back there, more than happy to have a chat around how you can get involved in that, because that to me is one of many initiatives that we're doing to really secure supply and grow demand of horticulture. The other one, just quickly, is trying to get a coordinated program around creating demand for fresh produce. If we all eat one additional serve of vegetables, that's 90 billion serves of vegetables in Australia. And the benefits on dietary intake, preventative health and so on are phenomenal, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of net gain. So one of our priorities in the new year is to look at how we can drive demand and do it in a way that supports industry.
This year, Doug, we're celebrating 60 years of the Forthside Vegetable Farm. You're a farm manager over the last 5 years or so. What do you think this farm's meant for you and the Tasmanian hort sector?
Long term, yeah. So big picture stuff. Certainly in the early days when growers didn't have the understanding or the knowledge how to grow a crop, certainly the foundation was keystone to commercial production. In recent years, in my time, we've sort of seen a shift in the dynamics where it might not be, how do I phrase it? Today, the biggest win for me today is if we can get a dozen growers in the room, that's fantastic. I reckon that's an awesome win. Like, that's fantastic. But there's so many different ways of distributing information now, and the investment of growers' time to come to site, whilst I really do appreciate that, not all growers are able to do it. I get it. So it's all about now educating the likes of the information networks. So whether that be NRMs, whether that be Nutrient Ags, the field officers of the world, other companies. That's how we do it. So
thanks, Doug. That's actually a really nice segue into the other celebration of the 60-year celebration, which is the 60 years of ag science in Tasmania. And Cam, you undertook a ag science degree at UTAS. What are your reflections of ag education and how that shaped the Tasmanian industry?
Yeah, I was the star student, that's for sure. Look, in any industry, in this one in particular, we have a real strength in how close we are as an industry and the connections. And either way, we just need more people in the industry, more educated people to drive all the innovation and productivity gains required just to keep it going. I'm a big advocate for education in our industry. I have been providing and continue to provide a scholarship or 2 scholarship positions to the university, and we try at every opportunity to engage with potential students and with students to visit the farm at all times. I just think it's the most critical thing is to have good levels of education in our industry, and the university's part of that, and the TAFE's part of that, and even, to be honest, high schools and primary schools are part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we certainly know that those scholarships are highly valued by our honours students, and often some of those go on to do PhDs as well, and end up in the research world, and end up in industry as well. Caitlin, you're an ambassador for VET training, and you were the 2020 Australian Apprentice of the Year across all industries. That's huge. Like, how has that shaped your career to where you are now?
It's been not only massive for myself personally, but I think it's also helped the industry in a lot of ways, hopefully. I've been able to get into schools and chat to high school students, and I know there's a lot of work with school farms happening in Tasmania, which has been amazing to see. But I really am passionate about that lower level of where the education starts in particular, because you've still got people through to high school that still don't understand where their food comes from, still don't understand what goes into crops, and don't understand the amazing industry and what it has to offer. Because a lot of people think of agriculture and specifically think of farming and, I've got to be a farmer and I've got to do long days in the paddock and stuff. And yes, you can 100% do that if you want, but there's also so many different parts of the industry that you can go into. You can be in the lab, you can work in the paperwork side of things, you can work as an agronomist, as a scientist, as a farmer, as a consultant, you can do absolutely everything. And I think that with the diversity within agriculture, obviously horticulture, and we've got viticulture and, everything else, it's really got to be shown what we can offer, how they can get there as well. I'm not against uni at all, and I went down the vet sector and did a Certificate 3 in agriculture under my parents, and for me, that's what worked for me. And then I went on to do a Diploma of Agribusiness Management because I saw my Certificate 3 as all my practical skills, forklift, first aid, chainsaw, all of that stuff, which is 100% necessary. And then I was like, right, now I've got to take it to that next level, and now I've got to learn how to run a business. I've got to do a BAS, and now I have to pay people, and now it's come full circle, and I have an apprentice working for me. It's been massive for myself, hopefully massive for the industry, and any opportunity to share stories, to network, to get stories out there, get people out there, and to bring city to the country more, and just really involve everybody in the whole production of this is where the food starts and this is how it gets to you. It really makes people appreciate it so much more.
Anthony, we do hear the stat, there are 6 jobs for every agriculture graduate quite regularly. How do we get more people studying ag?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we are involved in a number of programs, and we've got to capture them early, as we've heard. We've partnered with the Primary Industry Foundation in Australia with a number of other industries to make sure that we develop curriculum to get into young kids' program at primary school and high school, and that's core to capture them young, so those that are in the cities actually understand where food comes from. We also offer, and I believe it's opening up again next year, Nigel, the grad dip in agribusiness, which is for those already involved in the industry, and that's run through TIA. And we also offer grad dip in protected cropping, which was a bespoke degree that is offered through Western Sydney University for people already in the industry. And then there's a plethora of other opportunities. I mean, Nuffield scholarships, Churchill fellowships. Cam was fortunate last year to go on a traction tour over to the Netherlands, which was one of our initiatives to, again, look globally and bring back locally opportunities abroad. So there's plenty that we do, and we're always open to more because it's such an important area, particularly getting kids involved at an early age.
Thanks, Anthony. Hey, look, we've got a few minutes for some questions from the audience for the panel. Does anyone have any burning questions they'd like to ask any of our panellists? Yeah.
Considering there is no such thing as waste in nature, wondering why here in Tasmania we have hardly any anaerobic digestion, for example. So we've got vegetable waste, and there's this war on waste discussions that we're having on food safety and all these sort of things. In Europe, Scandinavia, other countries, biogas, other such energy opportunities are being utilized. So tens of thousands of opportunities. Here, maybe a handful. Is there any sort of discussion about bioenergy on farms? For composting?
Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my limited understanding of it is all based on scale. I know, small and just the cost of handling, like it's such small amounts of waste left over, it's not a viable option.
And seasonality to a part. Without the part of the scale is it all comes in 3 months, and you have a 12-month feed stock.
Any other questions? At the back there?
You touched on this a little bit about the disconnect between producer and sustainability, and there's people out there making a lot of money doing the wrong. What would you like to see happen to help bridge that gap? And I guess what's Innovation doing around helping producers sustainability?
Really, the only thing we can really do is become much better at communicating what we do every day. And, Anthony mentioned that I had the privilege of going on a Hort Innovation trip last year to the Netherlands and Denmark looking at sustainability. And to be, quite frank, all the best things put in front of us on reflection to what we do here, we're already there on so many fronts, and we're just not very good at talking about it and telling a story about what we do and how we go about it would get us most of the way there.
I think too it's got to come further down from the top, especially for us producers, for vegetables and that sort of thing. Obviously, Coles and Woolworths, they've got such a huge responsibility that I don't really think that they take that as seriously enough, because obviously they're trying to get things as cheap as they can. But how can you expect growers to grow things for less and less when inputs are going up and up? And where's that gap in the middle, when you can't even get a 10 cent price rise, for fresh market potatoes and that sort of thing? Where does that leave the producers? And that's where the big get bigger and the small get smaller. But it's got to come back to the heart of where farming started, and it was family farms and, people wanting to provide and then just scaling up and up. So I think that there's so much responsibility on us to do the right thing, but where's the responsibility on those big companies to make sure that the right thing is happening and they're doing the right thing as well? And that's where it comes, fresh care and all of our audits and that sort of thing. Not everybody has to do them, and regulations are different per part of the industry as well. So it'd be good to see everybody being really held to account through those audits. And, it's not necessarily going out and fining people and things like that, but it's education and be like, here's something really simple that you can do to make it better. It shows with farm safety in Tasmania as well as safe farming, that whole mind shift change around that, how it's not that they're going to throw a book at you now, they're going to help you to make things better. And so it's got to come from the top down as much as we want to do it. Sometimes it doesn't get us any further either. So it's got to come from the top.
The only thing I'll add, Ozzy, is picking up on the conversation around showing what we're already doing, because there's a lot already underway, and helping communicate that. And a couple of weeks ago, we released the Australian Grown Sustainability Framework for Horticulture up in Brisbane to a number of peak industry body leaders, and the Federal Minister for Ag actually opened or announced that for us. In that document, it presents what the desired and aspirations are for Australian horticulture across everything from food safety, from biosecurity, from a sustainable workforce leadership and everything. And, taking that to the next level is how do we underpin that by showing, demonstrating the data, the science and the great work that's happening to underpin, the framework. It's great to have a document, but so what? And so the next phase is getting the data, the insights, and growers like Caitlin and Cam and others to, put on the table what's already happening and support that conversation, particularly as European markets and other markets are starting to ask for it. So how can we, provide that evidence to underpin the sector so we don't lose trade and we remain globally competitive?
And to be fair, I think we've really improved over the time, the last certainly 15, 20 years, like where we used to have chemical drums floating around dams and in creeks and gullies. Quality assurance has helped get us there and to set that standard. It's the painful process it was. Like I think we've definitely leaped to where we were. Yeah.
Look, I think we might leave it there. I think it's about time for lunch. Please put your hands together and thank our panellists, Anthony, Caitlin, Cam and Doug.